Hi everyone! This video is a book review about the children's book, The Story of Ruby Bridges by Robert Coles and illustrated by George Ford. I have the special anniversary edition. This marks day number 2 of 4 of our MLK Day 2019 countdown. I decided to select a book that was not directly about Martin Luther King, but related to his vision. That is why I am wearing a button from the 2004 MLK Day March in St. Louis, because that's when I started studying Black history as a youth, and another button, Black Kids Matter, because we are speaking about Ruby Bridges. At the end of this video, there will be a slideshow featuring video footage of Ruby Bridges as well as photographs of Ruby Bridges. So I'm excited to get into it. Oh, and before we get started, if you have not bought my bookmark, the link is below. It's a bookmark featuring my artwork. It is $2 and it has a quote. Each month I will create a new bookmark for you to purchase. So this one is the one for January. Now we will get into the book. Let me tell you a little bit about the author and the illustrator. And I'm going to read it to you because it is a lot. So, the author is Robert Coles. Robert Coles is a child psychiatrist, professor at Harvard University, and author of more than 50 books. He is best known for his explorations of children's lives and books that explore their moral, political, and spiritual sensibilities. He is also known as an eloquent spokesman for voluntary and community service, the subject of his book, A Call to Service. In addition, he has written literary criticism, numerous biographies, reviews, poetry, social commentary, several children's books, and regular columns for the New Republic, New Oxford Review, and American Poetry Review. I literally don't know how these authors do it. They amaze me. But it says he was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for volumes 2 and 3 of the 5-volume work Children of Crisis. I also believe that he may have been Ruby Bridges' psychiatrist, because when I was researching, I found a video of him discussing his thoughts about why did Ruby Bridges not have trauma. So clearly, I guess he was her psychiatrist as a child, or when she was a child. But he asked her basically, why is it that she didn't yell at the people or get angry? He was discussing how in other cases some people would have just snapped, yet she had no type of emotional trauma, mental trauma from all that she experienced on her way to school. Oh yeah, it was very interesting. Now, the illustrator, George Ford. George Ford, a Brooklyn, New York native, is the son of immigrants from Barbados and the West Indies. George spent part of his early childhood in Barbados. He studied in New York City at Cooper Union, Pratt Institute, the Art Students League, and the School of Visual Arts, and earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Education from City College. He has illustrated more than 24 books for children and has received numerous awards and honors for his work. So he was the one to earn the first Coretta Scott King Award for illustration. Wow. Now, his work, I've only seen it on a few books. One is Ego Trippin', the cover of Ego Trippin' by Nikki Giovanni. There is also another about Paul Robeson, and one of my favorites, Bright Eyes, Brown Skin, which is the cutest little book, I swear. But yeah, look at these illustrations. This is George Ford. So now we will get into the book review. Overall, I loved this book. I had been seeing this book for years and years, yet I never stopped to buy it or read it. But when I got to the last page, which I will explain later, I knew I had to purchase this book. It was published by Scholastic in 1995, so it has been around for a little while for a book. The story goes over Ruby Bridges integrating Frantz Elementary School. Ruby Bridges was part of a family that was financially impoverished, but spiritually abundant. Her mother and father raised their children to have strong faith, deep spirituality, and because of this upbringing, this helped her throughout her life and throughout her experience of racism in school. How she ended up at France Elementary, if I'm pronouncing it right, was in 1960. She was one of 4 girls that were sent to desegregate schools. So these 3 little girls, they ended up going to a completely different school, and she ended up going to a school by herself. She mentions in a lecture, I don't know which lecture it was when she was older, Ruby Bridges mentioned that the day she started school, at least 500 of the children were pulled out. 500 children were pulled out because she enrolled in the school. And the other children that were there, she couldn't see them because they were kept in a different classroom. So she ended up spending most of her first grade experience in a classroom alone with her teacher, Mrs. Henry. Let's see. Look at all of these empty desks. Yet does it faze her? Nope. She's studying her work. Mrs. Henry and her teacher, Mrs. Henry, they had a very close bond because of this experience. Even when she grew up, her and Mrs. Henry remained very, very good friends. And you'll see a photograph of the teacher when she was younger and when she was older in the slideshow at the end of this video. But every day when Ruby would come to school, she had to be, surrounded by U.S. Marshals. The president ordered U.S. Marshals to escort her to school. Why? Because outside of the school, there were these crazy lunatic parents, and I'm not even going to mince words, these crazy lunatic parents that took time out of their day to come and harass a little girl. She had to walk through these people with their little protest signs, screaming, making ugly faces at her, yelling at her, throwing things at her every single day for weeks and months, every single day. I'm like, number one, how do you have the time and the energy to hate somebody that much? How can you call yourself an adult if you are literally taking time from making money at your job to come yell at a little girl trying to get her education? Some people, when they look at racism, they're like, oh, it's bad, it's toxic. I just think it's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. Literally, it does not make any sense. You are crazy. When I look at the video footage, or when I looked at the video footage of the people yelling, they're just making these faces, and every video you see of a child going to school during that time period, integrating a school, it's just this evil face. Yet she was not even fazed by the faces. She walked through that with just a straight face, just walking. You ain't even tripping over these people. They're like, I don't want to go to school. They can't go. Ridiculous. If you look up some of the interviews of the people talking, they sound like complete, I'm not even going to use horrible words, they just sound like complete morons. One lady was like, I didn't want my child to go to school with the N-word and that. I'm like, okay, lady, you need to calm down. There was a photograph that I saw when I was looking up photographs for my slideshow, and it had these people with a box. I thought it was related to Ruby Bridges, but I wasn't sure. So I did deeper research, and she actually mentioned this photograph in a lecture that she was doing. In this photograph, it has a bunch of white adults holding a box. The box is supposed to be a coffin, and in the coffin is a little black baby doll, and they use this to threaten her. I'm just like, wow. That's just a whole nother level of stupidity, honestly. You took the time to construct a little coffin with a doll in it? Never mind. I'm going to keep on with this story. So every day she's going to school. She's not even tripping over these people. Mrs. Henry is waiting for her to snap. Because obviously, if you're going in this situation, you're going to want to yell at somebody. Somebody spits at you. What's your first reaction? You're going to start either cursing them out or you're going to jump on them, usually. Or you're like, why would you do that? But Ruby's just coming in, cool, calm, collected. Mrs. Henry doesn't know, like, how she can take it. How can she stand it? How? I say black girl magic, okay? That's my first answer, my initial answer. But at the end of the book, or near the end of the book, there's an image of Mrs. Henry looking out the window, and she sees Ruby talking to the crowd. She's like, what is she saying? She sees her lips moving. So when Ruby comes into the classroom, Mrs. Henry's like, Ruby, I saw you talking to those people. Like, what are you doing? What are you saying to them? I saw you talking. She's like, I wasn't talking. She's like, well, I saw you talking. And Ruby says the most profound thing that just makes this book an absolute Black History Month classic. And that was the reason I bought it. The psychiatrist mentioned this, and I guess he changed up the words. But she said, I was praying for them. She wasn't talking to them. I was praying for them. Every day before and after school, she would pray. She would pray for the people in the crowd. And she would pray before she even got to them. But she forgot that day in particular. So she prayed right before she went in the school. And her prayer was, please, God, try to forgive those people. Because even if they say those bad things, they don't know what they're doing. So you could forgive them, just like you did those folks a long time ago when they said terrible things about you. That is that was one of the most profound things I have ever read in a children's book, honestly. A lot of people, because they don't like religion sometimes, or they don't agree with one religion, sometimes a belief system can give you the strength that you didn't even know that you had. This was a little girl having her life threatened every day, yet she was never phased. She never showed any fear when she was walking through these crowd of people who honestly could have hurt her. All it would have taken was one person with one gun to shoot a bullet over there. Literally. They could have done that and they could have gotten away with it. But she was divinely protected. She had all of these people praying for her. She had all of these people counseling her to give her strength. But her faith also gave her strength because she came from a faith-based family. When you forgive somebody, it's really not an act of weakness. A lot of people view it as weakness. But honestly, it's not an act of weakness. It's a decision. You are choosing to let them keep their own stuff over there. When you hold on to anger with someone, when you hold on to that hatred and that rage, you are hurting yourself. I'm not saying forget, but sometimes you literally have to just not let things stay inside of you. Louise Hayes even talks about this. She talks about how emotions like anger and rage and sadness, they can transform into disease in your body. So essentially, you are poisoning yourself. If Ruby had had the hatred that this crowd had towards her, she would have poisoned herself. She would have never had any peace. When you see videos of her speaking as an adult, she has this presence that is so calm and beautiful and soothing. You don't see her you don't even see any stress on her face. She's just this beautiful woman with the most serene face. She had a completely different face than these adults yelling. You could see it changes the contortions of your face. Just look at somebody that's just been a hater all their life and see how many illnesses they have. Literally, see how many illnesses they have because they kept this hate in them. It's like pouring a glass of poison and you're drinking it yourself, thinking it's going to poison somebody else, and you're drinking it yourself. Don't drink their hate. A lot of people wouldn't agree with her parents' choice. Me personally, I would not have sent my child or allowed my child to go and integrate a school, because I would have rather had my child with people that looked like them, that I know would have treated them correctly with the same education as these other people, who would not have brought her any harm. Her parents were taking a risk putting her in this school. Honestly, you can't see what's happening to your child behind these brick walls. You can't see it. You even hear all these stories nowadays of like people dropping their child off at daycare, and next thing you know, their child's dead in the hospital. Like, how did it happen? No, the daycare worker beat it up. But you trusted this person with your child, your most valuable treasure. So her parents really had strong faith to put their baby in the hands of potential enemies. She was divinely protected. Honestly, I believe this child was divinely protected. And because of her faith and her courage, she transformed history. Me, as a child, I couldn't have done it. I have an attitude problem, okay? There's only so much that'll happen before I snap. I mean, when I was in St. Charles trying to get a job several years ago, people slamming doors in my face, I snapped. I'm like, I'm done. I'm done with St. Charles. I don't want anything else to do with St. Charles. And I left. I wasn't as stoic as Ruby Bridges. I had my whole attitude problem there. But since I read this book, honestly, about 2 days after I got it, I encountered somebody that I had not forgiven. And I thought of Ruby Bridges. I'm like, this girl literally forgave an entire crowd of strangers who wanted to kill her. And the person that came up to me that I had to forgive, I didn't have to forgive him, but this man had verbally abused, physically abused, spiritually abused my friend, my old best friend, and tried to destroy her life. He had tried to, he cursed me out. We got into a very big argument, and he put me in very uncomfortable situations. So me and him had very bad blood, and I had avoided him for 2 years. And 2 days after I was reading this book, I saw him, and he called my name, and he came towards me. So I had a choice to make. This wasn't a crowd of racist people. This was one guy that I had some bad blood with. I said, if Ruby Bridges could stand there and be at peace, then I'm going to see what happens if I make the same decision as her. So I ended up, and it threw him off, I ended up touching his heart with my hand, and I said, you have a good heart. Those were the hardest words to say, because this person tried to destroy my friend. But I said, you have a good heart. When you have a hater, sometimes you have to make one decision and two things will happen. You will rise higher, and the hater either has to flee or they have to come up to your level. When a person has to come up to your level, that raises them out of their nonsense. And then it's a hater turned into a new creation. Because Ruby Bridges was aspiring higher, she made the nation, I guess, overall, have to reach her level. So please enjoy this slideshow. Thank you for watching this book review. Stay tuned for the book review tomorrow, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.